Taking the convo to high levels. Comment, like, and subscribe if you're enjoying Durable Minds Radio.
Now you ask yourself, why does, the guys that come up in the streets, why do they tend to want to think they need to do everything in the streets, right? And these three gentlemen, they were allegedly, gang members, and they was indicted on sex trafficking and fraud charges, right? These three gentlemen was allegedly being a gang member and was indicted on sex trafficking and fraud charges, right? Now, you ask yourself, why? When you see things like this, it's like, how do you get caught up on all of these things, right? Where does it stem from, right? Well, doing a little, research on what they put out there, they've been building this case since 2018, right? That's what the investigators claim. Since 2018, the investigators, they claim it was, two adults, females that are victims, right? Money laundering operation. So fraud and schemes, right? And I have a visual for us. We'll jump into the visual. And, keep with a grain of salt. This visual is the news media, right? And the news media gets the information from the police. So we try to dissect all that stereotypical talk they say. So I kind of try to edit it out a little bit. Watch a little bit. Now, like I say, we're listening to the police that's talking to the news media. So we trying to dissect all that bullshit and really take it, in the street logical, in the pimp mind, and understand why guys in the streets want to do everything, right? And within wanting to do everything, how they put a target on their self within doing that, right? So it's only a 6-minute video. I edited up. So, I might pause in between, but it ain't going to be that long. Here we go.
Felony counts. In a sweeping indictment, the Arizona Attorney General's office is prosecuting the case, alleging these defendants didn't just run in a street gang known as the Westside City Crips. They operated a parallel financial enterprise dubbed the Money Dream Team. How did a scheme involving sex trafficking and pandering collide with allegedly stolen federal funds? I'm Justin Lum, and we are 26. A grand jury indicted the three men you see on your screen: 35-year-old Stephen Moore, 33-year-old Giovante Hendricks, 30-year-old Keith Wilson. The U.S. Marshals arrested them on outstanding felony warrants on February 19. Now, here's what the indictment says. Together, they face a total of 13 counts accused of running a multifaceted criminal enterprise, and they're all charged with conspiracy, illegal conducting of an enterprise, participating in a criminal street gang, participation in a criminal syndicate, and then certain charges are specific to certain defendants. But these are very serious charges they face.
Very serious.
Now, keep in mind, like I said, that this is still an open case. So they're not going to tell details of how the police discovered the operation, right? They're not going to tell details on, like, whether the women reported it, whether there was undercover officers, did they have, people within, whether was it fraud, was it phones, was it social media? They're not going to give any of that information yet because it's still an open case, right? To where they're not even, the search warrants are still sealed. You get what I'm saying? Witnesses are still being talked to, because there's no trial yet. Right? All right, let's continue.
This is also a state case, unlike what we've seen in some of these cases where, these are handled by the county attorney. This is being handled by
the AG's office.
Yeah, the AG's office. This is an 8-page indictment. This case goes back almost 7 years. If you look at all of the charges and what they're laying out, very limited indictment. We don't have a lot of details regarding what they're being accused of. But you said
There are two alleged adult victims in this case, and according to the indictment, Keith Wilson was the one trafficking them for prostitution with purposes by deception, force, or coercion. That's the language that we see in these type of crimes. As for the alleged money laundering, this was interesting. The defendants received money from the victims via Cash App, Zelle, or other local banks. And we're gonna get to the
and watch. I'm gonna get deeper into how when you want to juggle a lot of hustles and really not know how the law works within them hustles that you're doing. How one hustle can, once they get infiltrating that one hustle, everything else trickles down, right? Everything else trickles down. What's going on with Marlo?
federal funding aspect, those allegations in a moment, but it's interesting how you have this blend of traditional street gang affiliations with the organized financial structures for over so many years, according to court records, and what kind of case investigators have to build to present to a grand jury. We don't know how much money was made through this enterprise, allegedly, but back to the nickname Money Dream Team, very flashy for this subgroup. Social media photos that we found, they show the defendants wearing the chains that reference MDT.
Now, see, this is what they're going to show, right? They're going to give you the details that these gentlemen already gave, right? They're going to be able to do that. Like, oh, yeah, well, this is what they showed us. Why? Because this is how they built the case to the media, and they also could build the case. Who's the media? The jury. You get what I'm saying? Now, I'm not calling these gentlemen pimps, right? All I'm saying is if you're in the streets, right, and you're trying to juggle a lot of things and you're not trying to master one thing, sometimes you get full of yourself, right? You feel invincible. When reality is, these laws, they understand that it's a long run. Like I said, they said they've been investigating these gentlemen since 2018. So that's 7-8 years right there.
And they flaunt a luxurious lifestyle.
Yeah, as we've seen in some of these cases, there is a digital footprint, right? That some of these individuals very subtly talk about their lifestyle. They don't talk about how they fund it, but I think if you look at their digital footprint, it's not hard to tell that they live a lifestyle that would indicate that they are living above their means. Again, they use the moniker MDT, Money Dream Team, in a lot of their social media handles. One of them, as we've learned, had a local rap career. His lyrics indicate kind of his lifestyle. We've seen this before when individuals live this kind of life. They like to rap about it. So you do wonder whether the prosecutors at the state level are going to utilize that digital evidence in their case. But again, it was not hard to find. I know a lot of people don't really use their real names. They use their stage names. You
see what I'm saying? They're saying that it wasn't hard to find, right? So if you're one of these guys that, you in the streets and you're doing your thing this way and you're doing your thing that way, you should want to tell yourself you might not want to expose your hand to the internet just in case they already are in your business. You're not able to give them the alley-oop, right? We're just talking in street terms right now. We're going to break down. We already know these gentlemen aren't pimps, right? We already know, when these females, they see a little, a young man or older gentleman doing their thing with some money and all that. And they jump in the, want to fuck with them. But they're not totally true to the lifestyle, right? They just trying to hustle in all cylinders of the street life. You get what I'm saying?
These three individuals had kind of put themselves out there on the digital sphere. It was not hard to find.
The count that stands out in the indictment is count number 5. It's focused on Keith Wilson. We keep bringing up his name a lot, who, according to investigators, used fraudulent documents to obtain a small business administration loan through the Paycheck Protection Program in 2021. Also important to note, he and another woman that we're not naming applied for loan forgiveness. It's unknown how much they received from the government, but this takes us back to the pandemic era where these loans were being obtained.
Now you notice the loan. Now they talking about the loans, right? And it seems like your boy Keith was doing a little bit of this and he was the one doing everything, right? And, notice they talk about the loans, how the PPP loans was going since the pandemic. And they've been tracking these gentlemen since 2018. You get what I'm saying? To where they're still playing the longevity game, the law enforcement. People might be thinking, oh, we done got it figured out. When reality is you don't. And you don't want to start showcasing and feeling yourself on social media.
Again, very limited in details, but what we did learn was Mr. Wilson was using other individuals, other females, to conduct transactions, make deposits, make withdrawals. So, whether or not those individuals, those women, are going to testify, whether they're part of the investigation or not, we don't know. But if you read through the indictment, he was he's not only being accused of defrauding the program, but using other individuals, other carriers, to conduct those transactions at these local banks.
And you would think that these women, these people would want to testify because, in a sense, they're being implicated here in the indictment by the alleged manipulation of Wilson, and the prosecutor is saying that they cleaned the dirty money by way of these bank accounts or digitally, like we mentioned earlier.
All right. I think we got the gist of it, right? I think we got the gist of it. What happens at the end, he's just going to basically explain about, let me see.
More comment, Keith Wilson's attorney says that the mere fact that a person has been arrested and charged is not evidence of guilt, and he intends to defend himself vigorously against these charges. Mr. Hendricks's attorney has also declined to comment, as they don't comment on active cases. We haven't heard back from Stephen Moore's attorney, but he is apparently out on bond right now with the condition that he wears an electronic monitor. All three had $150,000 cash bonds.
Yes.
Okay. So like I was saying, man, it looks like Keith Williams was really the one that was, doing, moving a little bit too fast, trying to juggle a little bit too much, right? And, when this happens, when they're trying to do everything, right? My take is, when you're trying to do all the hustles, you're causing attention to yourself, unwanted attention to yourself, right? Unnecessary attention to yourself, and you might not be noticing it because you're hustling in all of the lanes, and you probably don't know how the law enforcement works totality in all of those lanes. You probably just know a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but you're juggling so much that you're not really focused in on new laws and how the doing certain things may affect certain things, right? Greed, right? That's one of them. They be greedy, right? They mixing lanes, right? To where it's like they doing fraud, they got gang activities, they dealing with prostitutes. You know what I'm saying? They doing all of this type of things, right? And that equals multiple investigations at once. You get what I'm saying? That's what it equals, man, multiple investigations at once. You know what I mean? To where like one lane, like, okay, we focus on one lane. We talking about the lifestyle. We in the lifestyle. One lane can, you can make some money. You feel me? You could be focusing on the money. As for, too many lanes, it's gonna create evidence. You get what I'm saying? When you're trying to do too much and moving too fast and whatnot, things can start creating evidence instead of making money, right? Yeah, you're making money, but you're also building a case on yourself, right? You're also building a case on yourself. And I think where this case really stemmed from is the fraud, right? Because a lot of people don't understand when, financial crimes, brings the most detectives, right? Financial crimes bring the most detectives in situations, right? to where when investigators start looking at bank accounts and cash apps and Zelles and tax records and PPP loans, it starts, tracing all of their transactions and doing that. You know what I'm saying? To where now we got, we're able to go into the people's phones and we're able to see how the people move every day, to where now we're seeing the trail of things. You know what I'm saying? To where now fraud, because they're getting into all your businesses, because they're going to go issue warrants to tap your phones and get into your social medias and all of that. They're going to be finding new charges. That's how they start to build a case. You get what I'm saying? Now, if you're dealing just on, the pimping and pandering and all of that things, it's going to be hard to build a case off of all of that, because you have a victim involved, to where that's the main thing. Now, yeah, you can go on the phone and try to, put some money laundering on it and whatnot. But fraud is really where they get the warrants to get the okay to do a lot of things. And to where now that follows up on, you feel me, one, being able to be exposed to the other things that they're trying to do, right? And that's what I think happened. And I think that happened to the young gentleman, Keith. And once they got this gentleman's information, they just sat on it and just start building the case slowly but surely, right? To where it exposes, right? To where whoever somebody is talking to. So now they tapped into his shit. Now they can just hear this and hear that, right? They can see where he's sending this. He can see where they're sending that. They can see if he get hotels. They see the traveling patterns. You get what I'm saying? So that fraud investigation, you know what I'm saying, it really uncovers the whole network activities. You get what I'm saying? Everything gonna be done sloppy. Each one is in their own lane. Can't be a jack of all trades. You master none. Right. And within, this is the thing when I always tell, I got cousins that do their little scamming and all that. It's like, master that shit then. When you're getting into the fraud game and all of that, a lot of people just utilize that because it's some quick money. And then they try to juggle other hustles. You get what I'm saying? They think this is just a lick real quick. But they don't understand when you continuously trying to hit that quick lick to go do other shit, you might be building a case to where now they're tracing all your movements just by fucking around with that fraud shit. You know what I mean? Just by fucking around with that fraud shit, you're opening more doors. And also the gang. So they was labeled a gang, right? And I think they got the gang labeling, the news in the police is through the social media, right? Through the social medias, because once they tap in through your phone, through the fraud, now they can hear everything and see everything, and then it starts adding up. They like, okay, we got enough information to know that this is a gang. Gang labels, that increases charges. You get what I'm saying? To where now it leads to criminal enterprises. Instead of just individual people, it's a gang participation. That's racketeering type shit, Instead of just working on that individual, now you're amongst a group, or organization. You get what I'm saying? And I'm not here to bash the gentleman. I'm just talking to the ones that are free, right? Now, I hope the best of them. Like I said, this is just indictments. They're not really, like they said, the Mexican one or whatever he is, he bailed out, right? So you got to make some sense to it, to where they're not in a flight risk, right? To where if they're not in a flight risk, well, how much evidence do they really have, right? You get what I'm saying? So I wish the best for the gentleman, but moving forward, you learn from situations like this, and that's basically what we're touching on. How if you're trying to do everything in the streets, that one of them things that you might not really master will trip you up and you will get charged for all the things. You get what I'm saying? Because that gang shit, like I said, and the reason, these dudes is because of the street culture, right? That street culture often pressures the people in the streets to be seen, right? Everybody wants to be seen. They want to choose an image, right? Whether it's the hustler, whether it's the scammer, whether it's the gangbanger, whether it's the pimping, whether it's the plug, you know what I'm saying? They want to be seen. And some want to be seen at doing that all at the same time. All at the same time. You know that motherfucker that's always trying to network, thinking they got somebody for everything. Like, oh yeah, man, I know how to do this. I know how to do that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That motherfucker, you know. And over time, like I said, these gentlemen was, you know, in their young 30 years old, to where it was time to start realizing. I'm pretty sure these gentlemen were realizing, but they didn't understand the importance of juggling hella hustles and then exposing, you know, their hand on social media, right? Because they're chasing an image, you know, whether that image be status, that image could be what, like, you know, fast money, like we talked about yesterday, that fast money, chasing that bag for that status. It could be things like that, you know. It could be their ego, or it could be their lack of focus, you know. It could have been all of these things, man. You know what I'm saying? And how that affects this community, because it does affect this community, or I wouldn't have been talking about it, right? It's because now undercovers operations might become more, right? All because they wanted to, you know, juggle into the pimp game. And that's one thing that listen, if they was just doing they gang banging and they scamming and all that type of shit, and there was nothing with dealing with, you know, the prostitutes, I wouldn't be talking on this topic. Just like all of these cases that they talk about, oh, this dude was dealing with I'm not touching on nothing with because that's not of the community. It's unrelatable, right? I'm not, because if you talk about it, then therefore you're thinking it's of the community, you know, when reality is it's not, right? So I can't talk about it, you know. But this, because they wanted to juggle within trying to, you know, deal with prostitutes, now we have to talk about it, right? And now you got to understand, you know, they pumped up. Like I said, this is what, the 6th one in this year? 5th or what, something like that? To where these undercover operations are going to be active, right? More online monitoring, right? I actually, you know, I think tomorrow I'm going to show y'all another live breakdown on how, I think it's in Texas somewhere, they're basically now pretending to be a female on the ads. You get what I'm saying? Pretending to be a female on the ads and actually waiting for gentlemen to want to basically text as if they're pandering the female and then set them up. You know, I was going to touch on that tomorrow. Where they from, church? I believe this is in Arizona. I believe they're out of Arizona. I don't know if they're from Arizona. I know they got charged in Arizona, right? I know they got charged in Arizona, man. And like I said, man, that PPP loan is the real reason how it all started. I think they was doing the PPP loan, and as y'all heard in the documentary that we just played, you know, bro wasn't only using his name, he was using all it, so he was doing his thing, and they seen it all and was, you know, up on game, and they just milked him for a minute, you know what I'm saying? And that is what it is, you know? Anybody wanted to come up and chime in on this, they doing a lot of that in Texas right now and in Vegas with the females acting like 304s. Right. They for sure are. And what I wanted to lastly say on this point before we move on is this. You got to understand that they're aiming for not the real participants of the lifestyle. They figured it out, like, if we make enough noise on getting the ones that are acting like it, then we're going to move the needle, right? When it comes to media or whatever the case may be. When it comes to politics, they're going to be able to move the needle because they're showing numbers, right? Oh, this pimp. They put that pimp title under somebody that never did no pimping, but they got the charges pimping. That don't matter, right? In society, that's a number, right? So the needle is going to move. And that's the main reason I talk to the young adult gentlemen in the game and get them to understand the importance of taking this lifestyle seriously. Because if you don't, you're putting a bigger target on yourself, because as you see in 2026, that's what they're going for. You know, they're going for principals, coaches, gangbanger. They're going for everything but the real deal, you know. And if it's the real deal, it's not going to hit the news, because the real deal ain't going to give them nothing to be exploiting. You get what I'm saying? They ain't going to have nothing to exploit. They just going to have maybe, hey, man, the female got mad because pimping was pimping and something happened with she telling the police, and that is what it is. You know what I'm saying? And within that, the female might still speak highly of the pimp man just in her emotions, to where, you know, he just locked up. It ain't publicized because there's no exploitation to that. There's no capture. There's no big rah-rah. See, the big rah-rah is the ones that's mixing it to fix it. It's the ones that's trying to deal with prostitutes and never done no pimping, right? The ones that's been working 9-to-5 jobs, and then they got a crush on a 304, and that 304 running a jam somehow, and bada bing, bada boom. Or they doing different little things and having it their way, so now they want to act like they know a little bit about this pimp life and start partaking in it with dealing with prostitutes. You know what I'm saying? So that's really what I wanted to touch on.
Before you slide, press subscribe. Durable Minds, radio, logic apply. Hit the button, elevate your grind. High level conversation.